temptation is to be a white label for big corporate. But if you start doing that, it takes a year to onboard each customers. And then you're stuck. Once the corporate customers start paying even a small fee, they have to justify paying that. They have to launch.
A lot of health tech starts with pilot, right? And especially your robotic case, you probably start with a pilot. And getting out of pilot is not easy.
And what we found was only percentage of population want to try telemedicine. That's why. Behavior is so hard to change.
Khun Natwut Amornvivat has an extensive experience, rare vantage point experience across fintech, digital platform, and now health tech. He was the co-founder of T2P Fintech, one of the Thailand's most successful fintech startup. He was the chairman of True Digital, involved in launching health tech solution in collaboration with Sirat Hospital. So today's conversation will tackle a practical question: how do health tech founders in Thailand and Southeast Asia get to market, find the right entry point, and scale beyond pilots? Please welcome Pinat.
Thank you, Billet. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. And I also have to start humbly by saying health tech is such a vast area. And my involvement in my experience would probably just very small part of it. So whatever I share, it might be too narrow to cover all of your aspects, but just to
but general entrepreneurship, I think you have a lot of experience, right? I think you have built and scaled fintech startup and now have experience in health tech, supporting health tech initiative. When you look at health tech in Thailand and Southeast Asia today, especially what's going on with AI, what do you think is the biggest opportunity right now?
Yeah, so basically I'm speaking from my personal experience from being from the startup side and also from corporation, which work with startups as well as hospitals. So at True, we are a large corporate and we acquire some startups as well as work with partners with startups and certainly with a lot of hospitals. So that is my approach to this. Now, the area is really vast, as I mentioned, right? And it totally depends on what kind of a size you want to approach this. Some will require a lot of scale. So certainly scale would be very important if you want to approach B2C, for example. Some would be more of a solution specifics, less number of customers, less number of total market, but you might still make a good business out of it, right? Really vast, really different. So in my experience, which I was told is a bit outdated, so I did the telemedicine platform, and I heard nobody here doing that. There was no...
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
It's been solved.
Yeah. So I just share from that experience a little bit in case somebody doing B2C. That might be relevant a bit. But I also did some robots with the hospitals. So you can see that these two are very different in terms of business approach, right? So what I see, I just take 4 examples of what I see, right? One, I think Thailand and maybe regionally, we have problem with accessibility. We don't have enough doctors ratio compared to the population, right? I think 3 to 4 times, like maybe basically 25% less than average, the global average in terms of developed world, right? So I can't remember the exact ratio, but we have problem with accessibility. Bangkok will feel much less, but if you talk about the whole Thailand, approach to be able to get the right access to and to meet the right doctors, quite difficult. So that's one. So if you want to solve that, it could be telemedicine, it could be all the stuff that you get consultation, it could be some health services. So those would be the area about accessibility. So that's, I think, opportunity number 1. Number 2, certainly AI and data, right? And a lot of people are thinking about that. And we always have problem with the interconnection of data between hospitals. And certainly with AI, if you can do that, you can interpret using AI as well. So AI and data insights, that would be the number 2, I think. Number 3, I think it will be related to health services, not just telemedicine, but what I did, and the hospitals say they really need it, is that they're running out of, they are facing the constraint of nurses, right? So services in the hospital and also to support the workload of nurses in the hospital. So basically efficiency, right, and better care. Those would be the third one that I want to take. And if we have time, I can go into some of my direct examples that I did.
Sure. And I think feel free to give example as we have conversation. But like I think a lot of times when we see founders, and especially first-time founders, they try to put total addressable market on their slides, right? And is usually very big, but it's not addressable, right? And because so I guess the question is, how do you size the market so that it's actionable? It's not obviously healthcare market is very big, but how do you put it so that it's tackable? You can actually go in with that. Yeah.
Okay. So let me take an example of telemedicine. It seems pretty mass, right? Telemedicine example I did when I was at True. So it's a large company. We have to do something big. If we do something small, we couldn't compete with startups, right? We have to do something mass. And we thought telemedicine is pretty mass, right? We work with startups who have already recruited. Let me give them credit. They call Shiwi, but we acquired them. We acquired majority, and we rename it into Modi, which is good doctor in Thai. The background was we want to have that and really expand it, right? So we do a telemedicine, basically a session with doctors, right? That was during COVID time. It's probably obvious opportunities, right? And when we did, and when we grow pretty quickly, 200 doctors turn to be 600 doctors, and sometimes even more. Number of sessions grow up really quickly. And then suddenly hit some plateau, right? And what we found was only percentage of population want to try telemedicine. That's one. Behavior is so hard to change. Secondly, as any apps-based type of services, you need to use that app quite frequently in order to remember that app still in your phone, right? If you just treat the sick care basically, by the time that you get sick, you already forgot about this service, right? We need to try to make sure the app have some more information so that people keep visiting it quite quickly. And we did it. The numbers not grow up that quickly. It still hits a plateau. And we thought the addressable market is much larger, right? So what's wrong there? From talking to a lot of wise people, the mentor, whatever, he said, and a lot of people said, okay, how many doctors do you have in Thailand? Do anybody knows?
60,000?
Not more than that, right? Yeah, so 60,000, some say 30,000, whatever. And the wise idea came from someone who gave me this, is that 30,000 doctors spend time meeting with any customer, the whole population basically, right? How many times a month, right? How many times a month that they can create this session from the supply perspective, from the doctor's perspective. No matter how large Thailand is, 70, 80 million going forward, doctors stagnant there, right? So if you want to make money from doctor session, let's say 300 baht a session, and you take 30% from that, 100 baht per session. How many times a month? How many doctors can lend their hand, can be on the platform? Even though you take the whole market, it could be around 40 million baht a month. So 400 million a year, 480 million a year. That's the whole market, let's just say that, right? And if you have 5% of market or 10% of market, that's the maximum, right? You couldn't be a really big startup if you cap by that. That type of market size estimation, it's not just the math of it, but it's the pivot that we have to do because we're running against the supply limit, right? So we said, okay, at some point we're gonna need to charge on the medicine, right? Charge more on the medicine. We have to go from sick care to preventive. We have to do health conscious food and health conscious supplements. The products has not much of the limit as much as the session. of the doctors, right? Has much more. So the market is how you pivot, is how you define which market you want to be, right? We can start off with that, with the session that the market expand if your vision, if your horizon change. So that is the example of how we struggle and then change it. And at the end, we're making much more margin and revenue from medicine margin. And after you get some volume, you go back and talk to the pharmaceutical companies and try to gain a better deal or whatever in terms of cost, that type of things.
So I think you're doing the economics, like really understanding the economic of a certain sector really well, and that really informed the decisions, right? And try to project the best case and see whether it's okay for your startup, and then if otherwise, then you have to think about a different business model on how to make money. Yeah.
Same customer, same suppliers like doctors, insurance, whatever, but you have to twist to grow your market, right? To change the perspective of your services.
But that is also a struggle, right? Like when startups go to fundraise, they have to put the TAM as really big so that it's interesting. Okay. But at the same time, you may realize in your heart that it's not addressable, right? Like how do you balance that, and how do you sell that story when you're in the room with investors?
I think at the end of the day, you just have to be frank about your business model. If you're targeting that type of service and it basically shows that these are the economic of this market, you probably need to be at best case possible, but still very frank to your market. That way it forces you to, instead of try to maximize the calculation, but as I said, shift your model into margin of the products and things like that. So that would be my advice, instead of trying to beef up the numbers.
So be frank to yourself and really think very hard. If there's no investors, would you want to do this business, right?
And if the investors are related to health tech, they see through it immediately, right? They know which area have limitation, which area have more scalability, things like that. So you really have to be credible that way.
To get into the market, do you think of it as a starting point in listing of disease areas, workflow, customer segmentation, or payment source? How do you think about where to start if you want to execute in health tech? How to execute? If you want to execute, like where's the starting point? If you want to come up with an idea, you start with say, hey, that is a fast and growing disease area. Let me look into it. This is a clinic, nursing home is a fast-growing segment. Let me look into it.
Yeah, I think from my experience, partner is super important, right? So we might not all be like doctors and guys who are in the healthcare from the beginning, but so that's why I think partner is super important. You really need to talk to or bring in as partners the doctors, the insurance guys, whoever that in the market. Therefore, your spark of ideas from that hospital visit might not turn into your life obsession, right? So it's not enough. So you really need to know what's the insights, what is the real pain point from the veteran, from the market. Telemedicine, we have an opportunity to work with the founders who was a doctor, are doctors, right? So that's good. They know. They can talk to doctor much easier than us who's not doctors, and we have to realize our weakness, right? When we do robots, doctors actually the one who called us and said, what can you do? I just tell you a little bit. The robot we did was the one in the cancer ward. It's treat customer with radioactive iodine drugs that they need to swallow, and basically the radioactiveness, that's what's dangerous for the nurse because they have to be there like all the time, right? So that's the pain point. We could never imagine that pain point before, right? But the doctor is the one who came up with that pain point, but they realized we probably could do robotics, but how do we make sure that there's a very good robots that fit that UX UI and really help the nurses treat customers? So my short answer is to really talk to the industry players,
the clinicians, the doctors.
Yeah. And then what we did next for that robot is that we don't ask for pain point anymore. Once we know that there's some pain there, I told the doctors that, okay, if you don't mind, we just want to observe. So we don't ask for pain point, we observe the actual behavior. And we bring in a few different backgrounds, like engineers, we bring in some different people with different backgrounds, and we meet with nurses, and we really look at how the services are being provided. And then we brainstorm, and from different ideas, different perspectives, it comes up with a lot of ideas, and then we prioritize and really prioritize it down into what is 1, 2, 3, and then we not gonna do 4, 5, 6 in the first phase, that type of things, right? So, yeah.
Yep, that's great. So now that we have discussed how do we do the market, find out the problem, how do you enter, right? For example, I think the telemedicine part is a really good example. You wanted to pivot to deliver medicine. How? It's not easy, right? You've been doing sessions with doctors and telemedicine for a long time. How do you now ask people to order your medicine and deliver? So, if that's one example, or the other one is, let's say, the robots, right? You come up with the robots. How do you, I guess you start with one, and then where do you go from there? Yeah.
Okay. Let me give you a story about telemedicine when we start. I talked to doctors, because there are a lot of telemedicine who did try and couldn't make it happen. I talked to my doctors, he's a senior year in my high school, and now he's a doctor in a large hospital. I said, we want to try to do telemedicine. And he said, Nat, do you really want to change the paradigm? Or you just want to be a tech provider of telemedicine to a hospital? I said, I really want to change the paradigm, because I'm not going to do something that too small, because back then I wasn't true, right? We want to change the paradigm. We want to change how we treat people. He said, okay, if you really want to change paradigm, don't bring in shareholder that is hospital. Why? Because their business model of hospital is you want patients to physically visit the hospital, right? It's totally opposite of the telemedicine interest. And I'm not gonna name anything, but there are a lot of telemedicine which could done well, profitable, but they probably very hard to grow, right? Because if you partner with hospital, you end up stuck with them as a tech provider of telemedicine. It's the tools for hospital. There's no right or wrong here, but that would be another approach. So if you ask about how we start this, it's okay. Now we're gonna do a B2C. I'm not gonna bring in the hospital as partner, but we want to be our own hospital, right? So no hospital shareholders. But there's some group of doctors that are doing individual doctors recruitment to be in her group, the like-minded doctors, and create this telemedicine. That way it's more neutral and it's more disruptive. It's more disruptive, right? But we don't have the credibility of doctors. But these guys already have credibility. They can talk to doctors. They are doctors, right? So we end up starting there. We start some B2C first, and then we grow. We grow a little bit, right? There's always temptation, always, because big hospitals said, okay, true, now you are doing telemedicine, right? Please come in and be our partner. By saying that, they mean be our OEM, telemedicine engine for them. That's very natural for any hospital to ask, right? And we did some of that at the beginning, 1 or 2. But certainly, as you probably can guess, it's not scaling anywhere, right? It will take 6 months, even a year, to customize OEM, a white label system. So we are trying to avoid that at all, right? We did 1 or 2 and then we stopped doing that. Keep growing the B2C. If hospital wants to come in, you can join as partner, but we're not going to be your OEM or white labeling services to their platform. In my fintech as well, always temptation, because I'm not in True, we are startup. We need cash. Temptation is to be a white label for big corporate. But if you start doing that, it takes a year to onboard each customers. And then you're stuck. I reason to myself that if you choose the right customer, you will grow with them. If you have 10 of the big, very good customers, each of them have 1 million consumers, for example. I'm switched to fintech now. We can grow pretty nicely. But the reality is that if they grow from, let's say, from the start, 10,000 customers, we talk about B2B2C, right? We do OEM, and they start with 10,000 customers that using the fintech for their restaurant chain, for example. If they grow from 10,000 to 1 million, they're going to renegotiate the fee with us to make sure that our fee, our revenues stay pretty much flat. So that's the problem
true.
with starting with B2C. So my advice would be 3 steps, right? If you can start with B2C, you don't have to grow so big. After a while, you have your own platform. You can say much more firmly that if some corporate want to join, you can join as partner, not for us to do OEM for them. But if you are B2B, start with a small corporate, not big corporate. Control your platform, making sure you're not,
Don't get squeezed by
change everything, redo everything every time. Stay with one platform.
But how do you, telemedicine trying to go to medicine delivery? Most people would think about it, right? Like, how do you differentiate in terms of execution and how do you get there, right? What do you do that's differently from other health tech startup that you can get there?
Yeah. So, of course, at the beginning, we just a doctor session. If they prescribe any medicine, we basically channel to our any pharmacy to deliver it. But we control the coordination of the logistics for them. After a while, we have more volume. And we, as I mentioned, we need to get the revenue and margin from that sales.
I see. So I guess because you own the platform and instead of going to hospital, you can control where the medicine come from.
Exactly.
So if you go straight to the hospital and the hospital say, no, we're going to go from our pharmacy to the patient, right?
Yeah, you cannot do that. They're going to control everything. So we send to a small pharmacy. Actually,
so you partner with smaller pharmacies?
Yeah, but not a lot, right?
Okay.
Maybe 4 or 5. Not individual pharmacy along the street. 3 or 4 pharmacy chain, which you can control. And you can select, hey, if this become too expensive, we send to these guys and things like that. You can play a little bit. But after a while, we open our own pharmacy. Because we can acquire the license.
Yep.
And we have much more margin out of it.
Next is, I guess, is a lot of health tech starts with pilot, right? And especially your robotic case, you probably start with a pilot. And getting out of pilot is not easy, right? You can get pilot, you can say, hey, let's do this 1 year developmental. And I guess the question is, what is the decision to stop product development? That's the first one. And second is, once you have nailed that, how do you go from pilot to a paying customer?
Okay.
And now, from the first one to the second one.
So this is the point where I have to disclaim that doing robots, in my example, may not apply to everything. What I did is that I work with Chulalongkorn Hospital, which is a government and medical school, right? They have a lot of say in whatever happens in their hospital. Unlike, because of the FDA, it might be harder if you're not doing with medical schools, right? So that's one. What we did was, after this observation, right, for the cancer ward that we did, I said, okay, next meeting, after this brainstorming, I would like to bring in my basic robots already. It's like an MK robot. It's a restaurant robot, right? The good things about it is that LiDAR and basic robotics movement is already there, right? Cost effective. But the upper things about the medical integration, to check the radioactive, those will have to be created, right? So, but by bringing in and start almost like prototyping, it brings in a lot of ideas. It brings in a lot of ideas up to the point where the idea is too overwhelming. So nurses have a lot of ideas. The guys who transport the radioactive medicine have a lot of ideas. Now, to answer your question about where to stop, I think we are lucky that we work with the doctor's counterpart who is a very good innovator in terms of he can help prioritize requirements. It's so hard for us to say to the nurse and to hospital employees and say, okay, we're going to stop there. Oh, the additional ideas not count. That definitely cannot be done, right? And we work in a very friendly, collaborative ways anyway. We shouldn't do that. But the doctors, the right counterpart is super important. He or she is the one who said, okay, let's decide that the phase 1 is going to be this, and whatever requirements going to have to be after the first launch. And the way we influence is that we not say that in a meeting. We get all the ideas, not discourage anything, but we talk to him and really prioritize with him. And he is the one who communicates with his side of the people that help us to define the pilot. And how to get out of that pilot is that it's a gradual process. So we start having a very crude prototype. After a while, we have a prototype, but we never test it with the patients, but we test it with the mock patients. We bring in some of our patients, some of our fake patients to try and make sure it works. But because the robot has to have UX and UI, it needs to talk to the patients, whether it's through AI or whether it's through just simple screen with the doctors behind. It all UX and UI. How you do that? The example is my engineer. After a few months, he said, our robot is quite ready. The UX UI is pretty ready. I, of course, go and test it myself, right? And I feel it's okay, a bit quite close. But I said, please bring in someone who's your friend that's not related to this project at all. In fact, he bring in someone who worked at his house to come and try to be a patient. And then everything is flipped upside down. Nobody understands any UX UI, right? Because if you test it with the one who's in the project, you just know everything. And you know the wordings and you understand whatever the robot said. In fact, nobody understands it. It's just an inside-out approach. After that, because the doctor is the one who involved with this, we start going to patient trial. We did patient trial for months, okay. And then we launched. And now it expanded. Okay. Now expanded to the point that they equip the new ward with the new doors that can talk to robots and know when to open and close, because it's a negative or positive, depends on the use case, pressure. Yeah.
I see. And have you gone beyond Chulalongkorn?
For that robot, not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
That robot expanding in Chulalongkorn. Yeah, but it's expanding numbers.
Have they started, I guess, paying for the project?
Yeah, even the first robot, we insist that they pay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it difficult negotiation? I think a lot, and some people are in this room have worked with medical school before, and they're like, no, we are here, you give us for free, and then you use it as your poster child, and then you just can continue to sell.
Yeah. I think if you work with the right partners, you can be upfront about it. And you have to, you cannot survive, but you have to be upfront. But if you are software, maybe it's more difficult, right? However, there are a few things that you can do. I think you have questions related to infinite loop of pilot, right? Yep. One thing is to have a very small upfront fee, very small, if you can. And I did that in fintech. And we did the right and wrong approach. Obviously, we start with the wrong one. We do pilot and keep doing it. Some of our competitor, in other case, they come in with a very small fee. Once the corporate customers start paying even a small fee, they have to justify paying that. They have to launch, because they cannot go back and talk to their board saying that I pay this, but it never launched. They cannot do that. But they have all the incentive in the world if you don't have to pay upfront for you to just keep trying, because the pressure is not there. So charge even a very small fee. The framework, the my frame, I guarantee you they're gonna change. You're gonna change. That's one.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's really helped. And finally, we did that in fintech. Even in fintech, we did that. Now, for hospital, there's a real cost to you, right? This robot, although it's not customized, but it comes as a chassis, it's a real cost. you can be reason, you can tell them, right, that there's a real cost. You need to charge. Yeah,
Charge for the
but first robots, we can subsidize the development part, make it very nice, make it reasonable, right? And if you like it, the second and third and fourth one, we can do it together, right? So you can pay the full fee. But if robot become popular, it become deployable in the venue, we can split we can do profit sharing. That type of things, a combination could help.
Yeah, and I guess the last question before opening up to the floor is we cannot talk about generative AI, right? And 2 weeks ago there was a SaaS apocalypse, right? Like people will wipe code into every software. Do you think first of all, do you think it can happen in health tech? And second is, where do you see generative AI being most effective in execution? If you want to do AI in healthcare today, what would you think about, right? And not so that you don't get disrupted by Gemini next week. Right?
Okay. I'm going to have to start with, I'm not an AI expert by any means. What I know may be too basic for you. Of course, AI is probabilistic. So we could get things wrong, for sure, right? So guardrail has to be there. That would be the first advice. And you have to have the process where human or doctors kind of be quality control steps before it goes to the consumer. That would be the AI that I know. AI that we did for hospital in a different case here is that it helped the nurse to talk to consumers who calls in. It's basically a call center. But because call center is mixed with inquiries that related to health, we are very careful. So what we did is that if they want to do reschedule, which is 70% of nurse workload, it's nothing about health. It's about reschedule and confirmation, confirm the session with doctors. 70%. Basic chatbot, voice chatbot, text chatbot. If you can do that, you already deliver 70% of efficiency of nurse workload. So that AI, although quite simple, but it's there, right? Big value to hospital. Secondly, the AI that fully integrate with hardware, like a big X-ray machine. There are a lot of talk about it, even from startups. I personally don't know how to do it. I don't know how you can separate hardware, which is provided by Japanese machine, even China, how you can separate the AI part from it. It seems hard for me. So AI definitely even LLM to do that, or if not LLM, just different AI, for sure there. But I don't know how you enter that market from being a small company. Yeah, so that.
And they probably build their own model, and they have a lot of data, and they can probably do it better.
There's no reason for them not to have it. Yeah, but interconnection, the data that is not fully integrated with hardware, something neutral, something interconnected between hospital. Basically, the data market. You probably have a way to access that. You have a market as well, probable. Yeah.
I see. All right, thank you. So let's open up to Q&A. We have covered market sizing, speed hedge, strategy, and pilots and scaling, and a bit of AI, right? I would love now to open it up for questions. Try to keep the questions concise and practical so we can get through as many as possible. Go ahead, Devin.
Yeah, great question. I would classify as to simplify this into two interests. Private hospital, if you do something that it's better marketing, better additional revenue stream, additional services, basically revenue side, because they have way to charge for it. So revenue is more important than cost for them. Public hospital, everything is about how you can take more load or how not to take more load. If you can reach out, not having them coming on the premise, because the limiting factor is number of doctors, number of nurses, and number of square meter in the hospital and equipment. So they have great spirit, right? They want to serve more, but how they can serve more is the reach, like telemedicine, is the delivery, medicine delivery, is the payment, how you not loading up your cashier with the huge queue of people. So it's all about cost and workload control. Yeah. So I'm not sure I'm too simplified, but that is what we found. If you talk about that, it rings a bell immediately with the potential customers. You might only have solution for one because each one probably different, but you probably need to know, okay, these are the one, my products or my ideas fit this type of interest. Yeah. Like robots. I was really fearful for a long time because people is gonna reject robot because it's gonna kill their jobs in general. But robots that take care of dangerous job immediately embraced by the nurses, right? These type of things probably cut across the private and public hospital. But telemedicine are different, right? I think you need to really carve it differently. Call center, yeah, still cut across. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the really help taking more workload. Yeah, there are a few out there.
And it also depends on so once you have the idea, and execution in the private and public side is very different.
Very different.
Very different. Like public side, it's about regulation. You have to understand the regulation. There's no one person who can just put everything through. Yeah.
Yeah. As you bring this up, now I'm thinking about stakeholders, right? It's not just your direct customers. In healthcare, as in many other startups fields, ecosystem is super important. The one who decides could be insurance. If you are doing some products, could be insurance, like completely insurance decision making. So yeah, they might make a decision for that. So you need to tailor for their interest. Like we do telemedicine, I thought, okay, we're gonna help reduce the cost per visit for the insurance, right? And they might buy in because they have a big problem of medical bill inflation, right? Especially recently. So we sell to insurance. We sell not the platform, as I mentioned, we don't sell the platform. We sell the membership to insurance customer base through insurance companies. Those will be another customers, but it's not like directly hospitals, but yeah. So insurance, basically payers, hospitals, you need to really need doctors, regulator, very important, government payers, like Social Security, that would be very different mind frame as well. Yeah, so ecosystem. Think about your ecosystem and who is making decisions. Basic thinking is if you're a startup, you need to be able to scale like hugely, right? The big scale. Sometimes in my experience like robots, you might end up being a tech company, although quite scalable, but not scalable as in traditional startup sense. So yeah, there's a way to expand, but maybe the thinking, you might have to be realistic and cap that to be a more, whatever you do if it's niche. And you can think about expand to regional countries where this type of robots exists in a lot of hospitals, but still the total market and the growth would not be the same as doing a platform-based service, things like that. So whatever you need to do there is to make sure your economic fits that. Don't subsidize hugely at the beginning and think about the scalability, but you might want to do it more like a batch or one by one, basically fixed costs and variable costs, basically. Now it's going to get into the area where it's so vast. I think probably VCs have some specific business profile that they want to work with. I don't know. Some is more deep tech, which it can scale as well, but the profile is different for sure, right? Some probably go into more mass, more medical services, which is the adoption can be quite quick, and they expect a lot of growth quite quickly. So I think they can help, but you have to find the right VCs with profile. And CVC or VC, that would be also another question. In true case, it's CVC, but a lot of VCs are doing deep tech as well. So there are various. Because if we invest in them, we acquire shares and we expect it to grow financially. We throw in whatever assets that we have. Customer access, credibility with doctors, with hospitals. So from CVC, if you can classify as venture builder. We give them the assets that they don't have. But for pure venture builder, I have to refer to experts here.
I think as for venture builder, first of all, I think it's strategy, right? Like really, they understand venture builder has to be in touch with the funders, the VC, right? Understand the landscape where they're funding. When the idea comes to think of strategy, right? Like on what's the beachhead, what's the go-to market, what's the next expansion, right? So that's the second one, and of course help come up with a deck. But at the same time, think about everything, right? It's sitting next to them and say, hey, how do you recruit if it's the first time founder? Because most of the founders come to us they are technical founders, right? And technical founders, if you are interviewing a salesperson, you don't know what the hell you're doing, right? And how do you interview a salesperson, CFO, and all that, right? Recruitment is big, right? Another big one that we have seen very early on is financial understanding, and especially true in Thailand. And you can throw away all the textbooks, right, about 3 statements, just don't care. Cash flow. Just care about cash flow, right? What's your revenue cash flow? What's your expenses? What are your capital? And a lot of times, as in software, it's just computers, right? But it can also go into inventory, right? And all those you really need to nail it. And if the startup founders cannot do it, you have to help them do it. And we have actually taken some of the, say, hey, dude, I understand you don't have a statement, don't have any forecast. Give me your bank statement and just nail audit. Just tag it for me, revenue expense, and nail and tag. I will do the forecast for you. And then we just sit down and say, hey, this is the forecast on the cash flow basis, right? You don't need to care about income statement and balance sheet, just the cash flow, right? Because startup will die because you don't have cash flow, right? So I think those are the few things, I think, at least from our side. HealthTech space is, I think, network, right? So like us, we work with Sirat and MIT, right? So network access to the hospitals, right? And say, hey, your idea could go to this specific ward. Let me try to connect you to there, right? But at the same time, we have to be ready, right? We got to make sure that you're ready to go, and not otherwise. We'll also, after a while, the doctors will say, hey, like guys that comes through us are worthless, not worth spending the time, right? And I think I think those are the few things that I can think of.
Access matters, I think, for a lot of health tech startups. The problem is data. I don't have access to it. I know where it is. How do I get to it? And I think if any of the venture build firms can actually facilitate that connection and being able to talk to hospitals, like you may have a great idea, maybe the perfect solution, but doctors are doctors, as he explained. And so it's a different world when you're speaking to medical doctors and having those types of connections. So I think from a venture build is how do you create that ecosystem, the community that Pete was talking about, that you can facilitate that for the guy that has the idea, that can provide it to the people that have the ecosystem, the knowledge, all those other things, right? And that connection is really important. Besides the basics of running a business, which he was talking about, it's actually specific in this particular case. Health tech and healthcare is a unique situation because not only is your breadwinner, is also the most educated person in the room, is also the boss, right? Those are doctors. And that's why they're so hard to work with. Because normally the highest paid person in the room is not the person actually doing the work. But in this case, it is. That's the guy who's actually fee for service, talking to the ultimate client, and actually is saying, okay, we need to order that medicine. We need to do this MRI. We need to do this treatment. And that's the guy that's also the boss. Facilitating that between tech guys to that world is where a lot of tech misunderstands. And they also, there's small nuances. Don't piss off the nurses. If you piss off the nurse, you just lost the doc.
Yeah,
right?
Hospital is being run by nurses.
Yeah, the nurses.
Yeah.
So what's your job? Make sure the nurse loves you. How do you do that? Buy them food. It's pretty straightforward. Bring them somtam, bring them kaya, bring them kanom. That's what you do. Right? And so I think those are the things that, if you're really focused on this particular area, is understanding the ecosystem and having the connections. Whether you're working with Sivilat, or you're working with Chula, or you're working with Lakaba, right, who's just launched their hospital, right? Each of them has something you can probably connect up to.
Yeah, and that's perfectly reflect the situation, right? You not just access to doctors, but the right doctors with innovation mindset. That's very important because doctors are super busy job, right? And if you are senior doctor, which mostly is gonna be a decision maker in this or that place. Senior doctors like that usually super busy and also very rich. It's sometimes easier for a startup to work with someone who have pain and drive because they want to change something and make something happen, right? But very senior person who's very rich, sometimes it's very hard. I'm talking about telemedicine, for example. The good suggestion from people that is not in telemedicine is that get the most famous doctor on telemedicine so that it gives the valuable authority and the star of telemedicine. I said, how? I can't. That type of doctors, they don't even take new patients.
Yep.
You guys ever try to schedule? That doctor's not even in the physical hospital, they don't even take new patients. They're not gonna do a telemedicine session, right? So even with robots, right, we meet doctors who are willing to try. The good side about doctors, that's super clever and they're super science-based and enthusiastic about things. If they become excited about this, they can be really almost like a startup in terms of but you have access to the right doctors. That is very important. And doctors who can help you prioritize, as I mentioned, right? Because if they let their organization tell us all the requirements and never-ending loops, it's going to be for us to say, hey, this is enough. It's hard. But if he said it, as you said, he's the boss. If he helps saying it, it's much easier. Yeah.
When we talk, sorry if I may just add a little bit to that. There's a way to filter this, and so part of this comes from Crossing the Chasm, Entering into a NATO, Jeffrey Moore's book, but what you want to look is you want to identify your pioneers versus your settlers versus your so you want to identify that pioneer. And then you not only want the pioneer, you also want within that frame, you want your early adopters, which is they're aware of their problem and they're seeking. And this is how you actually identify who you're going to go after. And for the doctors, like I started my career 30 years ago in EMR in 1995 on DOS-based. And the thing that mattered was Dr. Schaefer. One dude that was pushing it in the 60 doc clinic, 17 specialty. That's where I started my career. And that's what matters. So how do you identify that guy? He's not necessarily the most famous one, but he's motivated because he's the pioneer. He's not the settler. Settler means, yeah, we'll wait until somebody else does it. The pioneer goes, oh, let's go try that. And it's different than innovators. Innovators will buy anything. They're like, show it to me, I got you. I'll buy it first. I just want to try it. I'm the gadget guy. The pioneer is the guy that goes, oh, yeah, I want to try that. Yeah, I'm willing to go and explore first. And that's who we're trying to identify. And there's a way to do it. There's a systematic way.
Yep. All right, let's have perhaps last question. And actually, if you have medical device, you should talk to distributor. They know a lot about it. And she's one of the top medical distributor in Thailand. Yeah, go ahead. I think, so always try to go with the big hospitals, right? In the big hospital, there are different tiers of doctors, right? There's the fellows, there's the head of department. Just try to find someone in a big hospital because big names matters, right? As big names in academic medical hospital matters as a reference to the next one, right? So I think that's first. How do you find them? So first is event like this, right? Obviously sponsor the orthopedic society. There's everything. There's every society to everything, right? So you go there, network with people, try to find the innovator that he says, right? And get them to use it, try it. Most of academic hospital will ask for a very suppressed fee, right? Or use it for free, right? But just prepare for that. Just think of it as samples, right? And then get the references. Get FDA clearance, and then you go to the next one. Yeah, yeah. I'm not an expert. Those are what I hear from people, right? But I'm sure like the startup who's giving lightning pitch today can give you a lot of ideas and strategy.